Okay, here we are. So, greetings, everyone that's here already in early because, me, I got to stop in early. Though I'll admit, I was actually busy up until just a couple minutes ago. I wasn't sitting here waiting like a lot of times I am. I'm just finished a pair of, well, I'm not finished with them yet, pajama bottoms right here. So, I got to make the drawstring for them. But I actually cut those out about 2 years ago when I did the video on how to make. Gosh, I hope I didn't get. I hope my whole intro didn't get cut off. Looks like I'm still doing good, but I don't know. I'm trying something different, people. On the because I really wish I could do away with mid-roll ads on my live. I don't have to have them on anything else that's not live, but on live you have to have mid-roll ads, and so I trying this thing where put them in manually, which I'm hoping means I don't have to put them in at all. I'll see if that works. But if you guys start seeing ads, let me know because I'd like to know for future when I do this again. Because normally what I do is I set them to for every 30 minutes, and then I get the option to skip the ads. And I don't, especially during a live, I really don't want to be interrupted. So anyway, for those of you who are watching this in replay, just know that I always come on anywhere from 15, 20 minutes. I might even start coming on a whole half hour early some days. And in this case, I came on about 17, 18 minutes early. So if you're wanting to get straight to the topic, just push ahead about 18 minutes-ish, and that should be about where I start on the main topic. I always like to come in early and just do some greeting time, talk about a few random things, maybe things are not as important, or do some announcements or whatever. And it's nice to be able to see people coming in and say hi, and hopefully people get a little more time to get the notification and all that before I get started on the main topic. So while I'm thinking about it, though, make sure that if you have any questions for me, put them in all caps. I know everybody has their different way of doing things, but going way back from when I first started my channel and was moderating live shows, it was always questions for the content creator were always in all caps. If you're addressing each other, please don't put them in all caps. You can just tag the person. And so they'll know you're replying to them or talking directly to them. And that way I can pick it out and see it easier. You know what I forgot? I forgot to grab my glasses, but you know what? I don't think I'm going to need them. I got to join in after all Constance from Cosmopolitan Corbett has no ads. She may be able to tell you. Maybe that's how she does it. Because I haven't seen ads on hers either. On the few, I don't get to drop in on very many live things. I used to never be that way before. When you did a live show, you didn't have to have ads all the way through, or you can just turn the ads off altogether. But knowing me, I'd forget to turn it back on, and I like to make it somewhat worth my time. So anyway, yeah, I've been getting some sewing done, and one of the things I also just finished was I've had this material for a little while. I got it from the 3H Linen, which is a place I do recommend. I was bummed that they raised their prices, but it seems like the linen went up everywhere. Well, this fabric was supposed to be peacock, kind of like a dark turquoise, and it looked really, really pretty. But when it came in, it ended up looking like denim, which, you know what? I think I like it even better. So I'm glad, because it will go well with a lot of things. So I just finished the skirt out of the fabric. So those are my tassels. So on a lot of these skirts like this, I just make the tassels and have them so they're always on there. And since the tassels are cotton, I just wash everything. I don't take them off. And they hold up pretty well. And then I made some of my pantaloons or knickers, whatever you want to call them, pants to wear under them. So I like doing it out of the same color. So if they happen to show, no one would even notice if I have to pick my skirt up. So I like wearing the pants underneath my skirts because it just adds an extra layer of modesty, as well as, especially in wintertime, it keeps you warmer. and I can still keep wearing my skirts. But even in the summer, I wear them, especially now with the 100% linen skirts and the underpants. I stay nice and cool. It's not an issue. So anyway, I never heard that. Thanks for sharing all caps. Yeah. Yeah, that's usually that's been the long time uh way of addressing questions to the content creator that's doing the live show for as long as I've been, either being a part of live shows or doing live shows myself. And it just makes it so much easier to see, um, and then pick them out when you that way when someone's addressing you has a question specifically for you. So some fun things. I went to got to keep track of my time so I can start my main topic on time. Well, since Patrick and I started attending a new fellowship recently, it's funny how God works. Sometimes he closes certain doors so we can finally pay attention to the one he had open all along. Those closed doors, sometimes they can slam pretty hard in your face and they can sting like the dickens, but you know what? It was the right thing. And even though there's still some pain there, things that's going to take Patrick and I a bit to get over, the good news is that we immediately were able to be accepted into this fellowship, and they're just really great people. The fellowship's been here for many, many years, possibly even before I came to Forks, because the guy's dad I know used to head it up, and now he's about our age and he's running it. And so through that, I was able to find out about a ladies thing that was going on at Assembly of God Church, where a bunch of ladies were getting together. They were calling it the Fun Flannel or Flannel Fun Night 2024. And this was Friday night. And so everybody was to wear flannel. It was so fun. It was a fun to be there. There was people from different fellowships there. Lot of ladies. I was surprised. And I am such an introvert and I don't get out a whole lot. And I have to tell you, when I walked in there, my heart was pounding. It was just racing when I saw how many people were there. But so many faces I hadn't seen, a lot of them maybe even in 12 years, just accepted me and like, oh, Heidi, you're so good to see you, and hugging on me and stuff. And it was such a blessing to be there. And I'm just so thankful for the Father for knowing what we needed. And Patrick's also been doing he's gone a couple times to a Monday night men's fellowship, men's Bible study. Not silly stuff like us girls do. But anyway, one of the fun projects was they had recipes to for making your own bean pasta soups on the wall, and you were to bring a mason jar. And of course, if you forgot one, they had plenty there. But I brought mine and a spare just in case someone needed it. And I didn't even know what it was for till after we got there. But anyway, we were able to mix up our own little beans and rice that they had out of what they had. It's not like, obviously, being someone who's been more prepared, I don't have a whole bunch, pounds and pounds and pounds of rice and beans. I still thought it would be fun to participate. They had little pieces of flannel. I picked this one, of course, because it was very fall-ish looking with the red and the orange and the gold. And I didn't follow a recipe. I just mostly put them in there and kind of layered them so they'd look cool, just so I could have this more as something. They even had like a little card that you could tie to it and gift it to someone that said what it was and how to prepare it. I just did it so I could have something as a memento that was cute and pretty. So that was fun. Yeah, it kind of looks like sand art, right? Especially I love these. I've never actually eaten these kind of lentils. They're smaller, definitely smaller than the split peas. And then they had even smaller ones that were black. Never had those either. But it was cool because it made for fun, interesting color. There's also some dried mixed veggies in there to add even more color. So it was fun. It was a fun little project to throw together, and good time of fellowship and scripture reading and just hanging out and fellowshipping with other ladies. Something I never do. And not anymore. At least I haven't in a very, very long time. So that was a blessing. What other doodads? I talked about the pajama pants I'm working on. All I gotta do is crochet that drawstring for them. Oh, by the way, I do have the video on how I make the pajama pants. They're super easy. You can, and I use the same pattern for the linen and pajama bottoms and for the flannel. So obviously the flannel ones are definitely going to be more for winter time. So that's why I thought I better finally finish out this other pair of flannel jammies I've had here. But I do definitely love my linen. They're so nice, especially for summer. But yeah, I have a video on that, on how to make the pajama bottoms. And you can just do a search on my channel and you can find that. So red lentils would turn to mush if overcooked. Yeah, I mean, I would assume so. Split peas are the same way. And in fact, that's just what split pea soup is. At least the way I've always had split pea soup was, it was basically just what do you call it? Yeah, anyway, there's like no whole peas in there. It's just this thick green. Some people hate it. It's not very pretty looking. I happen to love split pea soup. So yeah, I would assume any lentil would do that myself. But puree, thank you. Thank you. That was a word that was like going away from my brain and it just couldn't catch it. Like porridge, right. I usually like to add carrots and some kind of meat or broth, like homemade broth. In fact, today, when I'm done with the show, I thought about getting it started now, but I didn't know how much. These aren't very loud, but I still wasn't sure. Mics have a way of picking up all background noises and making them much louder than they really are. But I've got some chicken bone broth I need to dehydrate today. And with that, I'm also going to be I pulled out, this is from 2020, a jar of homemade chicken vegetable soup. And I'm going to try dehydrating that and then rehydrating it just to try it. So I can say, hey, this works out pretty good. And I like to have some canned soup on hand because you can just heat it up and eat it. You can eat it right out of the jar if you want to. You don't even have to heat it. You can just drink it out of the jar. But yeah, I wanted to try that. And I figured, well, that would be a good time because I know I'll have plenty of room I'm only going to run one dehydrator and I'll have plenty of room for the broth and for something else. So now's a perfect time to finally give that a try. I've had a lot of people ask me, have you tried dehydrating soup yet? And I'm like, no, I keep meaning to. It's just a matter of remembering. Usually what I do if I make soup, it's made from leftover, the bones of turkey and chicken, and where you make the bone broth and then strain the bones out after 2-3 days of cooking it, add vegetables and whatever else and pieces of meat in there and whatever herbs and spices, and then let that cook for the rest of the day. And we got soup, and most of the time we just eat on it. Sometimes I'll make a big enough pot that I'll can some up as long as I've got other things I'm canning. But if I like the dehydrated soup, I'll definitely be giving you an update on that probably next week, either in the live show or the Monday this and that, not tomorrow's, but the next week, or in both, and let you know what I think about that. Yeah, lentils are nice because they do cook quickly, very quickly. So I dehydrated. Yeah, Jackie, I'm glad I'm not the only one that found them to be really nasty in flavor when you try dehydrating. That's why I always say only sample, especially when you're talking something expensive like avocados, just sample a little bit. So I had taken avocado, peeled it, and then sliced it up in little pieces, took one slice and then sliced it in a bunch of thinner pieces and then dehydrated that. I was surprised at how well, considering the fat content, that it dehydrated and even powdered, but boy, the flavor was just horrible. But the avocado taste, fresh, was amazing. It was a great avocado. So now I've heard people say that freeze-dried avocado is pretty good. And I've also heard people say you can freeze avocados. I haven't tried freezing, and I don't have a freeze dryer, so obviously I haven't done that. But if you happen to have a freeze dryer, give that a try and see what you think. And yes, please like. So let me see. I'm looking for any questions that might be coming in, and Patrick might be joining us later. Do you use a pressure cooker to preserve the soup? Yes. So I've taught in fact, I recommend what was the name of the video? It just came out where I was talking about food preservation methods. I was talking about, pressure canning versus, water bath canning, and that there's people who water bath can low acid foods, but if you have a pressure can it because it's so much faster than water bath canning. Because if you water bath can anything, you'll have people that will say, absolutely not, don't water bath can low acid foods. But you know what? People were doing it long before pressure canners became the norm, because it's what they had. It's just the difference is, even in the 50s, people they had instructions out, which I've shared this before, and I even downloaded or yeah, the instructions, like images of the old instructions from the 50s on how to water bath can low acid foods and the time. And in most cases, it's 3 hours, no matter the size. There are a few things that you got to go for a little bit longer. Now, like fish is almost always longer, and something else, corn is longer. But yeah, and when you're looking at pressure canning, something like this, 75 minutes pressure canning, and it saves a lot of electricity and fuel in my case, because I use propane, than having to run it for 3 hours. So definitely I do pressure can. Do not like the taste of frozen avocado. Thank you for sharing that. I might still try it just like with the dehydrating. I might still take, like, next time I get avocado. I go through spurts with avocado, but I might do the same thing where I take one sliver and freeze that and then see what I think of it. But so far, fresh is the best, as long as you get it at that just right point where it goes from being hard as a rock to absolute black mush. Somewhere in there, there's like a 5-minute period where you can eat it when it's absolutely perfect. Avocados are funny that way, aren't they? Oh, is it Teresa's birthday? Happy birthday. Was it Teresa? I see happy birthday, Teresa. Okay, must be Teresa. Yeah, I see it now. So yeah, cool. And let's see, Howie, we're getting close to actually starting the time. What else? Oh, well, I'll talk about that when I get into the topic. Something I'm doing that I do actually mention in tomorrow's this and that video. So I know that the Monday video comes after the live show, but the Monday video is typically going to be shot on a Wednesday or a Thursday. And all other videos are shot right now, where I'm at right now, about 6 weeks ahead of time. That's how far ahead I am now. And I love being that far ahead. Well, it gets confusing, but it is nice being ahead, especially, with, when a couple of different times since I've had my channel, we've had deaths in the family, and I just needed, obviously, time off from having to shoot videos and edit and all that. And so being able to be ahead means the videos can keep coming out, and I don't have to worry about it. And then I work on trying to get ahead again when I get the chance. So let's see, just about there, time to start. And I wanted to see if there was any other little points. Oh, I want to say this as quickly as I can. I did make a post. I didn't make this post on YouTube because I don't trust them. But this platform in the past 2 weeks has been majorly wiping out my subscribers. Yes, I'm still growing, but now I'm down to about 1/4 of the amount of subscribers I would normally gain, because sometimes the number will sit and I can see it dropping sometimes, and it will go back up and it will drop and it will go back up, and it will drop. And while I believe a lot of it might be spam accounts, because they do go through the whole platform and start getting rid of spam accounts. They do this periodically. I do also know a lot of my regular followers have been removed. Now, obviously, if you're here, you either happen to find me or you're still subscribed. But just know that it's crazy. I feel like maybe it's not just me. I mean, I know it's not just me, but I mean, maybe it's not just me and other channels like mine that are being hit this hard in this way, but it sure feels like it's a singling out of certain types of channels. There's a lot of channels dealing with the same thing. I know I've brought up the Texas boys. They sat at 100 99,000 subscribers for like a year. That's insane. That's insane. So what that meant is they're just kept keeping them right at a certain spot, and that's kind of what's been happening to me. Thankfully, I'm still growing, but I'm wondering it keeps dropping, and so I'm wondering when I'm going to hit that point where I'm just no longer growing, where when I gain new followers, old ones are being deleted by YouTube, and it's kind of frustrating. So I've had plenty of people tell me I was unsubscribed yet again. Some people say they have to come in and resubscribe every single day. So, okay, now that past time to start, or right here, at least it says 12. Maybe my clock up there is just a minute fast. So we're going to get started on the actual topic. So here's where I like to do a real greeting. So it goes into the separate video that I'll be shooting, taking out and then making a separate video standalone. So it can be shorter and more abbreviated and pictures added and stuff. So hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. God is good all the time. And we're going to get started today in our topic on food preservation and the nutrients. So this is going to be in regards to the nutrients that you're actually saving. I'm going to be a little bit general. I'm not going to go into deep detail about every single thing, but I was kind of surprised and yet not surprised to learn a few things that I didn't know before, things I was suspicious of. But also this is because I get a lot of people that think that canning destroys all of the nutrients because, if you're pressure canning, that's 90 minutes. If you're talking quarts, this is just a general. And if you're water bath canning, low acid, 3 hours or whatever, if it's fruit, acidic things, it can be 30 minutes-ish, depending on the size of the jar. So that's a lot of heat and they're going to destroy all the nutrients. Well, you may be surprised. One of the other things that got me to think more about this topic was somebody that had contacted me. I can't remember if it was in a comment or an email, but concerned that or saying something that all store-bought bread has absolutely no nutrients in it. Well, while I will definitely tell you that fresh homemade bread from fresh milled organic whole grains is going to have far more nutrients and be far more healthy for you than any store-bought bread, no matter how organic it is. To say that even the healthiest organic bread at the store has absolutely no nutrients in it is just, it's a major falsehood. That is simply not true. So it's kind of understanding that, let's see. Oh, from Tyler. Darlene, I did the same thing. I saw Tyler. I'm like, oh, is Tyler Woods in here again? I did the same thing last week. I don't see him in here yet today, but hopefully he'll have a chance to stop by. At any rate, one thing I definitely had been learning for the past several years is that, especially when I started looking deep into freeze-dried foods, trying to understand. So, because I was considering the possibility of getting a freeze dryer at one point. So I'm like, okay, I want to do some comparisons first. What nutrients are being measured when they're comparing freeze-dried to dehydrated? What temperatures are they using for dehydrated foods and comparing it to, which they're always comparing it to foods dehydrated at 160 degrees and above, which I never dehydrate that high, ever. The highest I go, an electric dehydrator, is 125. That's the highest I go. I don't care what I'm dehydrating. But, no, I should say 140 to 160 are what they typically are comparing that to, which is really kind of unfair because obviously it's using a higher heat. And yes, more heat will destroy more nutrients, but it's not as much as you think. And that includes canning. So here, see, let me see what Linda says here. I don't remember my older family members talking about nutrients much. Mama always said, whether you like it or not, it'll fill a spot. Absolutely, Linda. And I think though I think it is important to be concerned about making sure you're getting as much nutrients as you can. I think there's far too much. It's the fear mongering thing again. Oh, if I can this, I'm going to lose all my nutrients. Well, here's something interesting is that if you take your fresh vegetables or fruits straight from the garden and immediately can them, you're going to preserve more nutrients than you would if you brought that fresh stuff in and set it in your refrigerator and left it in there for a week. Because once that stuff has been removed from the plant, it starts losing its quality and nutrients. But canning it is going to preserve most of them. And the thing that really got me the most was I for a while there was assuming it was maybe all the not vegetables, all the vitamins, because vitamins are more delicate than minerals. So I figured maybe it was possible it was all the vitamins that were getting lost. But like when they did the studies comparing freeze dried to dehydrated, they were mostly only comparing two two nutrients, and that was vitamin A and vitamin C. And that's it. Those are the two that get destroyed first. Then you have a couple of B vitamins. The other two, there's only 4 total that you're going to lose, either a certain amount of or possibly over time all of. And the other two are thiamine and riboflavin. And I was like, wow. So that would tell me you're probably still keeping all the rest of your B vitamins on all the other vitamins. And I already knew that you keep all of the hi, Tyler, there you are, that you keep all of your minerals, all of your fiber, all of your protein, all of your carbs. Those things just don't get cooked out. So I was really thrilled to learn that about the canned food. Is if you can it up immediately straight from the garden, that's how you're going to save the most of your nutrients. So not all B vitamins, just 2 of your B vitamins, thiamine and riboflavin. Not all of them. There's far more B vitamins than that. So A, C, thiamine, and riboflavin. And here's the thing. You don't lose all of them just from canning, just from heat exposure. That surprised me, especially C, because we're always told, oh, you're going to lose all of your C vitamins if you cook something. Well, that's not true. That's actually not true. You're going to lose at the most 50%. It's still a lot, but it's a lot better than all of them. And at the least, maybe only 30%. Now, as with any preserved foods, sitting in food storage for years at a time, especially if they're getting light exposure, yes, the nutrient, like it is still going to be mostly the vitamins. You're going to lose more of those over time, but it takes a while. But with each year, you're going to lose a small percentage. So that can be canned, dehydrated, or freeze dried. So whenever you're given these shelf life things, it's not that at 15 years, 10 years, 2 years, 1 year, that all of a sudden, oh, this is all bad, I got to throw it out. No, that's not what it is. Remember that when you look at dates on store-bought foods, first of all, they were something that's newer within the past, oh gosh, I don't know how many years. I don't want to throw a number out, I'll be wrong. But it used to be store-bought foods didn't have dates on them. Because if they were shelf-stable foods, they're shelf-stable, okay? But then it became a requirement to put dates on them. Well, guess what dates do? They make people throw out perfectly good food so they can run down to the store and buy more. And if you actually pay attention to what the dates say, they had to actually start removing expires from the dates so that it says best by or best if used by. Well, what that's telling you is it simply means you're going to get the best quality and the most nutrients if you use it by that date. And it's usually just a made up date. It doesn't mean it spoils after that time. It's such a misconception. Now we're talking shelf stable. Now, once you've opened that stuff, especially if it's something liquid, it's a jar or a can, then yes, it is going to spoil even in the fridge if you leave it for too long. But if it's shelf stable, it's shelf stable. As long as your food, whatever it is holding its seal, it's not going to just suddenly up and go bad. Now, I Canned food, okay, food bought, what am I trying to say? Foods bought in the store that are in cans, metal cans. They're gonna go bad far quicker than the stuff in your jars because, especially if you're talking anything acidic, I would never again store any kind of acidic food for a long term. So you're talking canned mandarin oranges, peaches, anything like that, tomatoes in metal cans. And the reason why is the acid in those foods will start eating at the cans and eventually it will break the seal. So not only will they taste terrible because that metal is getting into the food, it will taste like metal. If the food tastes like metal, that means that's what's happening. But it will also eventually break the seal somewhere on there. That's far less likely to happen with a jar of food. So again, this jar here is 4 years old of some chicken vegetable soup. So I had a question up here. I think it's a question. I see all caps anyway. Let me see if this is, this thing is because I'm used to using a mouse, not the mouse pad. It's Linda. Also, I told a woman once who argued until I saw I was butting a brick wall. Ferments dehydrated on a low temp will wake up in warm, wet gut. I even use some as a starter. I absolutely agree with that, Linda. And here's why. And this is where my suspicions over, because I'm going to get to the freezing thing here in just a minute. My suspicions over freezing versus dehydrating. Okay. So from my own experience, I have found that foods that have been, fruits, vegetables that have been previously frozen, when you go to try to ferment them, they either won't ferment at all or they're just not very active. So you have to use a starter if you want to get them to get going at all. Yeah, I found this one year when I was making we're taking the apples off the tree. I was dehydrating a whole bunch of apples and peeling them and taking the peels and making vinegar. But it's like, okay, I have a ton of vinegar and I have a ton of apples I'm still working through. I thought, why not just take these peels and freeze them and I can make vinegar with them when I have more space for vinegars, because obviously the vinegar is going to take up more space than just the peels in the freezer. So I did that. And then when it came time to make the vinegar, it fermented, but not as well, but then quickly went bad in storage. I've never had vinegar just go bad before. Well, I wouldn't even say it went bad, but I think I was contending with two different things. The fact that the apple peels had been previously frozen, and then the fact that I didn't have lids on that were airtight enough. They were just the standard plastic lids without the silicone liner in there. And so it was getting oxygen exposure, which vinegar that hasn't been distilled, when it's put in storage, it has to be in an airtight jar. It has to be completely airtight or it will keep working until it reverses itself and eats up all the acetic acid. So all you have left is nasty water. And that happened with all of that, but also trying to make a ferment starter out of frozen fruits, same problem. I couldn't get them to ferment, but I can do that with my dehydrated goods. I can make ferments with dehydrated, like a starter, especially out of dehydrated fruits, vegetables, or whatever, and not have any issue with them fermenting. And especially vinegar, because vinegar is the one thing I don't bother adding a starter to, but I use my starters for pretty much any other ferment just to make sure it's going to ferment. But I never do that with vinegars. Well, all of my vinegars now are made only with fresh or dehydrated produce. And that's it. And I don't have any problem without using a starter getting them to get going. So that told me something about the difference between dehydrating and freezing. I'm thinking clearly dehydrating preserves the beneficial bacteria and yeast, where freezing doesn't necessarily do that. It might keep some of it, but it's obvious that dehydrating holds it much better. And that seems really surprising considering the fact there's heat applied, but it's minimal heat. It's not the kind of heat like I think it's above 180 degrees and above is when you have to get concerned about it killing the beneficial bacteria. So when I got to looking into this, I was really kind of, again, it was surprised and yet not surprised to find that of all methods of putting up food, canning, freeze drying, dehydrating, and well, yeah, obviously fermenting and freezing, freezing is the worst for losing nutrients. It, in some ways, I was still very surprised, even after my experience, because years and years ago, I remember reading that freezing your fruits and vegetables preserves more nutrients than any other form of preserving foods. I'm like, oh, okay, because you're taking the raw food and you're freezing it. So it was kind of a shocker. And then here was the other thing, and I don't know. I'm trying to kind of read comments a little bit while I'm talking. I haven't looked too deeply into this, but oh, I just lost my train of thought. I know I was talking about freezing. What was that? Oh, blanching. Okay, I hate blanching, especially certain things. So a lot of things I do not blanch. If I'm going to freeze it or dehydrate it, I do not blanch. But apparently when it comes to freezing, if you're taking your fresh fruits and vegetables that you plan on freezing and you blanch them, that's actually going to help preserve those nutrients, prevent the nutrient loss you would normally get in the freezing process. And it kind of blew me away. But I'll tell you, I'm not gonna go back to blanching snow peas before I freeze them. I did that one year and said never again. Taking fresh snow peas and putting them immediately in the freezer is so much better as far as taste and texture. So I won't blanch them because the taste and texture, I'm getting plenty of nutrients from everything else. The taste and texture of those is far more important because they're nasty if you blanch them first and then freeze them. Yuck. Tyler. So for those who may not see the chat, he says, I don't like frozen vegetables since I nearly lost a tooth trying to chew them. Hello, people. You're supposed to thaw them out first. I know. That is Tyler being Tyler. So anyway, that I thought was really interesting. Now, it's not going to stop me from freezing certain foods. Definitely. I'm still going to be freezing certain foods, and I'm definitely still going to be freezing them without blanching certain ones. But there are certain things that I dehydrate that I do cook first, like pumpkin, other types of squash, zucchini I dehydrate raw, and potatoes, because potatoes can turn black if you don't cook them first before dehydrating. And there's something else. I know there's something else I cook first. That's a fruit or a vegetable, not a fruit, a vegetable of some kind. I can't think. Maybe it's just those two. I'm drawing a complete blank. But anyway, that's something to consider. Now, I don't think the blanching first before dehydrating is going to make a difference as far as nutrients, or I missed that part. But that's what I came across when it came to freezing. So that was a bit of a surprise. Now, fermenting obviously can preserve because there's no heat applied at all, no freezing going on. And that's probably going to preserve most, if not all, of the nutrients. And then I'm going to say it again about the freeze drying is that while you will probably preserve the A and the C, more of vitamins A and C than you would in dehydrating, the loss is not that big of a difference. There's not that big of a difference in the loss, especially when you look at the fact they're comparing that to dehydrating at a higher heat rather than a lower heat, or even just at room temperature. And the fact that if you're planning on cooking that food, that freeze-dried food, you're going to lose those same nutrients when you go to cook it and then some. So it's as far as nutrients, I tell people don't use that as a selling factor if you want a freeze dryer. If you want a freeze dryer, you got to decide, is this going to be the best for me? How do I plan on using this? Like some people, freeze dried food is going to be easiest for if you're going camping, hiking, or taking it in a bug out situation because it's the lightest weight, definitely compared to canned, but it also rehydrates easier and faster than a lot, not all, certainly not all of your dehydrated foods. But you still have to have water. But you can also still eat freeze dried foods straight from a package, and they're not going to be as chewy as a lot of your dehydrated foods. But don't use the nutrient selling factor as the selling factor for you because it's just not. It's not one. It shouldn't be. It's all exaggerated claims. It's based in truth, but you have to look at the whole entire picture. Usually, when people buy a freeze dryer, they're storing their foods the same way I do my dehydrated foods as well. Some people might store them in Mylar, which is going to prevent light exposure, which is going to help. But in jars, you're going to be more apt to get light exposure, which can destroy over time some of the nutrients. But of course, that's an easy fix because all you got to do is make sure you're storing them in a dark pantry, cabinet, room with thick, heavy blackout curtains, like what we do. Or like they used to do, like for root cellars, they also put curtains in front of the shelves of goods to prevent that light exposure. So let's see, can I use dehydrated milk to make yogurt and cheese? I believe so. I haven't tried it yet. I think somebody said they used dehydrated milk to make yogurt before. I haven't tried it yet. Or if I did, it was failure. I don't remember. But I know some people have said they have. And I don't remember. I know there was something I tried with dehydrated milk and it didn't turn out very good. Maybe it was milk kefir. It seemed like it was some kind of ferment. But anyway, but salty. So fermenting snow peas is great. I do like the way the fermenting them kind of helps keep more of that crunch. And mine turned out pretty good, but you probably just added too much salt. I just don't, since I use a fermentation starter that I make myself, I don't use a ton of salt when I'm fermenting vegetables. I put just enough in for flavor. But when I used to do kimchi the old-fashioned way, not the way I do it now with the starter, but with the salt brine, what I learned to do after my first batch is you let it sit in the brine overnight. Then the next day I would rinse it really, really well and basically kind of massage it to try to squeeze it, get a lot of that salt out of there. So that then when I went to mix it up with the rest of the vegetables and the spices that I wanted to put in there, it wouldn't turn out too salty. It'd still have some salt content in the cabbage itself. So it still has that for flavor and for preservation, but you wouldn't, if you get too much salt too, a lot of times, that's why has to be a kind of balance. I never measured it out. I just sprinkled the salt on there and went with it. But I learned by doing just what looked and felt right as far as the salt amount when it came to making the brine. But if there's too much salt remaining, it might not ferment at all. And then you'll end up with a slimy after two weeks. Typically, I would allow it to ferment for 2 weeks in the cold, in a cold area, like in the fridge or something. And sometimes I'd get a batch that turned out slimy, which meant there was probably too much salt in it, or for some reason it decided not to ferment. And that's why I like using a starter, because it's a guarantee that that's not going to happen. But yeah, yep, I agree, Teresa. That's the other thing is when I did the research into freeze drying, because again, I was looking into it because I wanted to know all the facts before I made such a massive investment into something like that. And the more I learned about it, and then the more I learned from about half of my followers that have a freeze dryer, half of them love it, half of them hate it. I mean, that's just kind of what I've seen. It's just a rough number out there, but I've had so many horror stories shared with me. But then on the other hand, I've had people like Cheryl here who love their freeze dryer, and that's great. I'm glad that people who have made that investment are finding it to be a very worthwhile investment because that's where it's important. But the reason I bring this up a lot is not to try to make anyone who's bought a freeze dryer feel bad or wrong. No, absolutely not. But it's because it's kind of like when the Excalibur was like the only dehydrator, even though they were newer than Nesco and which was originally Open Country was the name. I can't remember the name of the company, American Harvest or something that makes both. Well, then Excalibur became the Cadillac of dehydrators. Again, just like with freeze drying, this is nothing against the Excalibur. So I saw people talking about this Excalibur, and I still see it sometimes, not as much as I used to, talking about the Excalibur dehydrator, saying that's the only way to dehydrate food. And I'm like, well, that's absolutely not true. But then what happens is people feel like, oh man, because I'm dehydrating my stuff by my wood stove or using a hanging net thing or my own fabricated thing, I must not be doing it right because I don't have the Excalibur or I have a Nesco or I have whatever. And I've seen people do that where it's kind of like a shaming people for not spending a crap load of money on something they really didn't need. Now, if you found the Excalibur fits your need and it's perfect for you, great, great. But I can buy two of these for the price of for less than the price of one Excalibur. And I like these a lot. I love the way that I don't have to fiddle with the door to put it on there. That's me. That doesn't mean the Kasori dehydrators are best or that my setup that I use in the wintertime next to the wood stove is best. It's what's best for me. And so it's finding that it's finding what works best for you and just don't jump in and buy something that's really expensive because somebody on YouTube said it was the only way or the best way because it's simply not true. It's going to be different for each individual person. Well, and here's the other thing about the Excalibur is that I know they do make stainless steel trays, but I don't know if you can buy them now with the stainless steel trays. It used to be you're spending that much for the Excalibur, but still the trays were all plastic. And if you wanted stainless steel, then you had to pay more to get this, and it was more expensive than a lot of other stainless steel trays just to get those to put in your Excalibur. We're like with the Kasori, $140, and it already has stainless steel trays. And this is the smaller one. It was the first one that came out. It's 6 trays, but they now have a bigger one that's 10 trays. So it's not only taller, but it's also wider because it has wider trays, and they're already stainless steel. However, it's not a fine mesh. So that's why I use fabric. I would use fabric on it anyway, just like I did with my Nescos. Um, Especially when you're dehydrating something like thyme or anything that when it dries, it just turns into little teeny tiny pieces and it falls through. So now I've switched to linen, but a cotton or a muslin or cheesecloth or linen, something, it has to be all natural and the thinnest fabric you can get. And you lay that on your trays and then you can, anything that's not obviously really, really sticky or gooey or wet, you can use that and it will hold everything in. So that's the only thing about the Kasori I didn't like was how wide the wire mesh was on the stainless steel, but I'd put that fabric over it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Or I'm using the silicone sheets on there to, for dehydrating soups, broth, milk, whatever, and, tomatoes, because I puree my tomatoes and then dehydrate them. And so I just pour them on their eggs. Can't forget the eggs. So let me see here. Excuse me, I started getting frogs in my throat from talking so long. I thought I saw something here. Sorry, people. I got to stop and look. I'm sorry. Excalibur set the mark. Dehydrating is a skill. A dehydrator is just a tool. Absolutely. And and don't forget, this is one of the things I say almost every time dehydrating and freeze drying comes up, is that you don't have to have a dehydrator like this. You don't have to have a Nesco. You don't have to have an Excalibur. You can find, there's so many ways that you can dehydrate that aren't going to cost you money in equipment or even electricity. So maybe you don't have a wood stove, but you have some kind of heat in your house. If you already got that heat running in the wintertime, you can set up some kind of rack that you can set up close to your heat source. And especially if you have air blowing on it, that's going to dehydrate your stuff a little quicker. In the summertime, if you live in a non-humid place, you can do plenty of dehydrating outside, just in the open air. I just recommend throwing some kind of thin cloth over it so it keeps the bugs off, but using the open air in the sun to dehydrate. These are the old-fashioned ways to do it. Even meat was dried this way. Sometimes it was smoked, but not always. I have this old picture that, I'll put this in the separate video that I make from this, but where it shows Native Americans, they were simply, a lot of times they did smoke the meat, but sometimes they just laid it on poles out in the sun and let it dry like that. And that's how they dehydrated their meat to get them through the winter. They didn't have fancy equipment other than what they made with their own two hands. Can you use Kasori outside? Yeah, as long as you keep it protected from the elements. In fact, I have this top one. I didn't do it this last year, but I have some waterproof fabric. It's a PUL. It's just polyurethane. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cover for it. So in the summertime, I can just keep it outside. I'm going to keep it in the most sheltered place I can, but cover it when it's not in use. So if it starts raining, it's going to stay protected. But I used to always take my Nescos outside and dehydrate them out there in the summertime on hot days, so I wouldn't have to heat up my house. So yeah, I plan on doing the same thing with the Kasori. It's just a little heavier, not as portable as my Nesco was. So I plan on having that. I want Patrick to make me some kind of little table type thing that I can set it on during the summer months and just leave it out there. And then, like I said, put that cover on there. I'll have it pushed up right against his shop wall on the deck. And so it'll be under a little bit of an overhang, but then also have that cover I can throw over it to protect it. So I learned to dehydrate first on a white sheet on a tin roof decades ago. See, you don't need anything fancy. You don't, it doesn't have to cost people an arm and a leg. And I think that's one of the things I take issue with. I mean, yeah, we all like our gadgets. I love having my electric dehydrators, but if I had to, I could just do it without them. I just have to do most of my dehydrating during the winter when the wood stove's going, because things don't dehydrate well here in the summer when humidity is high. But I would find other ways if I couldn't afford to buy these. What was I going to say? Oh, the whole idea of people. I mean, if you like whatever the gadget is and you don't mind paying that kind of money and that's going to suit your needs after you've done all your thorough research to make sure it's going to be right for you, not just basing it on somebody's YouTube video that absolutely loves theirs and has a product to sell as well, because they get commission off of every sale they make through their, people going through their links. I mean, I do too on my Nakano knives, so I have nothing against that. And some of my other products like Garden Stock and a few other things, Mother Earth products, Dr. Jacobs. I have several things in there that are affiliate links. And so when people go through those links to buy the product, then yes, I make a little bit of commission, and that's great. But I'm also not going to try to sell you a product that I don't think, I'm going to be honest with you about it. Like the Nakano knives, do I think you need them? No, I absolutely don't think you need to go out and buy expensive Japanese knives, because I spent the first How long have I had those knives now? A year and a half, 2 years at the most. So I spent the first 56 years of my life not having expensive Japanese knives to prepare food with. You don't have to do that. You can use a pocket knife if you want, if you have to. So I'm going to be honest with you about that. I'm not going to try to tell you this is the only way to do it. But my point is that when people start pushing expensive dehydrators of any kind, I mean, because for somebody, $140 for a dehydrator is still going to be way too expensive because they're living paycheck to paycheck on a fixed income. So there's cheaper ways. I like to make sure people know there's other ways you can do it. There's not one right way. And I hate seeing people being discouraged from being able to put up food because they can't afford a massive all-American pressure canner because they are expensive and they've gone up quite a bit in price since I bought mine. And I got the second to the biggest one. It was expensive now then, and it's even more expensive now. The one thing that's really, really gone up in price since I bought it is my Country Living grain mill. I love it. It was worth the money I paid, but it's almost double what it was when I bought it back in 2013. I don't know, back in the 20 teens somewhere. A lot more expensive than it was then. And so that's why I don't talk about it that much because I know there's other mills out there that can work just as well. I like mine because it's sturdy and Patrick has it set up where I can use electric. I can run it off solar or it's hand crank and it's a big crank, not a little one. It's a big one. The bigger it is, the easier it is to turn. And for the first year or two that I had it, I ground all the flours by hand, which takes way longer than you think it's going to take. It's like 15 minutes per cup. And then it will depend on the grain. Some grains take longer to grind than others, even if you're grinding just as fast. But yeah, I'm not going to tell someone you have to have a Country Living grain mill that costs almost $800 now, because that's really expensive. There's other ways to grind your food. I mean, if your grains, I mean, if you absolutely have to, you can use a blender. It's not going to get it as fine, but you can still use it for things like making hot cereal and more. So, let's see, I was a dealer for Country Living grain mills, and we have one that we use and another still in the box as backup. Yeah, I certainly love it. It is a great one, and I love the fact it's made right here in Washington State. And so when I ordered mine up, it was just like, bam. Yeah, I think I paid right at about $400 when I got ours. So right now it's just a little less than twice what I paid. So, and I got it from Amazon, but still it was coming from like Kent or Yelm, Washington. And so it got here really fast, which was cool. But yeah, so that's my point. That's why I say that kind of stuff a lot. I'm moving my skirts and jammy bottoms out of the way because Patrick might be coming in here. Since I'm pretty much done with it. Oh, I have one more thing I wanted to mention on food preservation that you'll hear me talk about it tomorrow in the this and that. So I showed you earlier, you probably didn't know what this was. This is a jar of dehydrated rhubarb I put up in 2023, so last year. And I think this is the last jar I have. So if you watch tomorrow's this and that video, I had found 2 jars and I'm like, I know I have more of these. Well, today I found 2 more when I was going to look for the soup. I'd actually put them in there as placeholders in the box that I was keeping the soup in, because as I'd take the soup and other things out, I'd still like to have jars in there. So I'd stick them in there. I just grab whatever was handy. I got to stop doing that because then I forget that stuff's in there. So I did find 2 more and then so I had a total of 4 jars. And 3 of them I dehydrated up and put in here. There was already still some left in here. So this is my rhubarb powder. This is going to be the number one way I use my dried rhubarb from here on out, because I absolutely love it in the apple pies, which, yes, I'll be making another apple pie today. Using up those apples, and Mr. Rain and myself have really been enjoying the apple pies. But I tell you, adding about up to, an eighth to a quarter cup of the rhubarb powder to the apple mixture, so good. It just really brings out the flavor of the apples, and oh, I love it so much. So yeah, I was going to powder this one up too, but there's not enough room in here. So that's the other thing too, is that right in here is more, I would say about 4.5 jars worth of rhubarb that was cut and dehydrated. So powdered up takes up even less room. Dehydrated alone, zucchini is the same way. You dehydrate it, you can fit so much zucchini into a jar, and then if you powder it, you can fit twice as much. But I do keep some powdered on hand, but I mostly use the zucchini in the pieces. But the rhubarb I'm going to use more in its powdered form. So yeah, so that was the main thing I wanted to talk about and cover. Let me look over my notes really quick and make sure I covered everything about the nutrients. Oh, there is something I forgot. So when it comes to some foods, so especially when you're looking at herbs, medicinal herbs, like things that are woody, things like barks and roots, and then mushrooms, at the even tomatoes can bring out even more nutrients. So some people think you're going to get all the most nutrients if you eat it raw. That's not always true. Some things, yes, but not all things. So this is why roots and barks are commonly used, and especially your harder mushrooms like the turkey tail. When you dehydrate those up, they're hard. They don't powder up easy like just a standard mushroom would. Those are much lighter and airier, but your turkey tail mushrooms are very, very dense, and so they dehydrate up really hard. So those are best if you to simmer, to make a decoction out of, if you want to get most of the benefits out of there. And tomatoes are the same way. Now, while cooking the tomatoes into a sauce, you're going to lose some of your vitamin C and so on, you're going to increase the amount of lycopene that's available. And lycopene is excellent. And sometimes I don't know what I can say on here anymore, but I know lycopene can be very helpful at preventing cancer. So I hope it's okay. I just said that. I'm just saying it can be helpful. I'm not calling it a cure. But it's one of the many things. And so by cooking those tomatoes, you're making your good Italian sauces. The old-fashioned Italian sauces are cooked all day long, sometimes longer, with all the herbs and spices put in there. So all the flavors come out, and it kind of helps also condense it a little bit. But it also is going to increase the bioavailability of the lycopene. So remember, grapefruit peels. That's another one, and other citrus peels. You brew them, just keep cooking and cooking and cooking them. You'll lose up to 50% or more of the vitamin C, but thankfully not all of it, like I once thought. But you'll be increasing the amount of quercetin that's available. Another thing that is helpful in the big C that I just mentioned earlier. So lycopene, quercetin, these are things that you can increase it by heat, which means if you were to can these things, you're actually getting more out of them that way. So really what this boils down to, and I'll finish this topic out with this: don't be so afraid of preserving your foods however you want to do it. Canning, freeze drying, dehydrating, even freezing, even though that's where you're going to lose most of it. Or what do I keep forgetting? There's 5: canning, freezing, dehydrating, freeze drying. Fermenting. Of course, there's other ways to preserve, but the 5 main ways I'm talking about, especially when I'm talking about fruits and vegetables. Don't be afraid. Do what works best for you and what you like to eat. Not everybody likes fermented food. Not everybody likes dehydrated food. Not everybody likes freeze-dried foods. So, because that's the thing too. You can do it the best way that everybody claims, and if you and your family hate it, well, that wasn't really a good idea. Because it's like you don't want to be stuck eating food that you don't like. So Patrick is joining us now.
Your special guest?
Mr. Rain, my special guest again.
Best you can do, huh?
You're the only one that likes me enough to be a special guest.
Yeah.
So I know that somebody had questions on books.
Yes. Are you ready to
Yeah, go ahead. I'm done with my topic.
share the floor?
I think I'll share the floor.
So hello, Patrick from Rain Country. Anyway, we had somebody ask the other day what a good carpentry book was. And well, I haven't opened it up in a while, and I don't want to nullify or dilute the importance of having actually hands-on books. But this is a book that I do have. I have several different books that I can reference. So in the event that we don't have the internet or lose communications or whatever, at least you'll have resources out there. I just got on the internet and found this book on eBay for like $6, and they had 2 of them. And that's with free shipping. I don't know how that can happen.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I think
Free
they're
shipping.
actually just giving them away. But, if you're like me, you like lots of pictures, tells you all about
Notes falling out.
Yeah, I think I had that in there actually from the last time I was in the book. But it tells you all about cripple studs and how to frame in a door and trusses and all that good fun stuff. So I know there's a lot of books out there, but that's just the one that I have. So the individual who asked last week what I had for a carpentry book, well, that's the one I got. But yeah, I like to get on and look at YouTube and some of those other things, just talk to people, look how things are, just kind of walk around and see how things are built naturally. And, if you don't have tools or whatever like that, it's kind of fun to go in there and watch some of these guys that go in there with a handsaw and a Leatherman or something like that and and an axe and build something out of nothing.
Right.
But
that's a lot of work, though.
I'm trying to thwart that. I'm a little older. Hopefully, I'm a little bit wiser. Not much, but I like to think, well, let me get the toys that I need right now. And if they break down, at least I know how to do things by hand. We had one of our followers sent us this little book, which is useful. And what it does is it goes through and it tells you how to use some of the old hand tools, how to maintain them.
Isn't that vintage, that book?
Yeah,
which is cool.
It's an older book.
Vintage.
And the one that I showed you here, this carpentry book, is like from 1980, 87 or something like that. Is a copyright date on this. This one here
should be right. And Tyler's over here being a smart aleck.
Oh, I can imagine.
It's fun. We missed you last week.
Wait a minute, I can ban him, can I? Let's see.
We need him. He's our comedy
relief. Hi, Tyler.
And he's one of our
Hey, I
moderators.
was ribbing you a little bit earlier, and I don't know if you just ignored it, but I did. It was technical about the grinding. So anyway. Oh gosh, I don't know.
Printed in the United States. Oh, it doesn't have a year. It just says copyright, and there's no year. That's weird.
Yeah, usually every single book you pick up.
It looks like, well, it can't be later in the 70s, but which would make it at least vintage.
Anyways,
it's at least vintage. It might not be antique, but it's at least vintage. So
what is Tyler being disruptive? Is he in trouble? Tyler, are you being behaving yourself?
Well, he'll agree with this. He said, "I'm done roughing it and gone to smoothing it."
Yeah, amen. Yep. As much as we can, also I wanted to just go through the importance of having just basic how-to books. I went through my little library here and picked out just a couple of things. Here's a kind of a general, let's see, do-it-yourself manual. It talks about general carpentry and wiring.
Boy, it's got some little teeny
yeah.
tiny words in there.
Yeah, you got to put your glasses on for this, but it's it goes through carpentry, some basic cabinet carpentry type skills and stuff like that. Different fastener types, different ways to fasten. Goes into some plumbing.
Who is the author of the tools book? The old one.
The older one? That's Wagner, I think. Let's see. Yeah. Willis Wagner.
They might mean the other one.
I was just on this one. This one here?
No, the other one, the old one.
Oh, the old one.
That one that was
George Grouts. No, that's not the one.
He'll get it eventually.
That was the.
At least I think that's what, because she said that, or she.
Yeah, this one here is
the tools.
Alfred P. Morgan. Yeah.
That way. There you go.
Alfred P. Morgan.
So yeah.
And I have a furniture doctor. This one is also given to me.
Well, that thing's old.
Yeah, I had this in my finishing room. And it got spackled from something. Yeah. Anyway, usually when I go buy a piece of equipment, I try to print off the manual if I can, if it doesn't have like a good parts manual. So I get like a 3-ring binder and go online and actually this is a Wood Miser maintenance manual that I had put together. Wood Miser is really good about letting you have their stuff information wise. So the biggest thing I like is anything having to do with alignment and parts, because a lot of this other stuff you can kind of figure out on your own. But as far as getting the parts manual, I like getting the parts manual because you can get down and find out what you need and order it up. In particular, like with the Wood Miser, I went through and kind of made a list of different parts that I needed, or high wear parts like bearings, roller guides, blades, extra switches, up and down switches and forward and back switches, brushes for the lesser motors that run the mill back and forth and up and down. So I have a little stockpile or a squirrel away shelf for different parts for that mill in case, high wear points and different things like that. So I can go through and change things out, micro switches and things such as that. I like to get extra parts. Also, yes. If you are getting into like photovoltaic type stuff, different things like alternate energy, it's not a bad idea to get a book to kind of try to understand parallel circuits and Ohm's law and series parallel, what kind of things increase or decrease when you put things in parallel or series. So a lot of that kind of stuff we like to purchase. And one thing I was wanting to ask Tyler, because he's into ham radio, and we've mentioned this before, but I'm guilty for not following up with more of that kind of stuff. But I'm looking to, we got some little Bofang radios. I think about 4 of them.
Yeah.
I bought extra batteries for it, bought extra antennas for them, things that can kind of fall apart, break or whatever. And so what we want to do is get like a little base station. I'm looking at the Yaesu. I know ICOM makes a good one, but Yaesu makes a 991 Alpha. And so I'm thinking about maybe getting that. Go big or go home, that kind of thing. But
he lost me too, Linda.
What's that?
You lost Linda.
Sorry, Linda. Where you at?
I'm lost.
Find her.
On the manual thing, somebody did bring this up, but I did want to add that when it comes to manuals to anything, doesn't matter what it is, any of your appliances, sometimes, we try to keep those appliance manuals, but they get like 1 year, I had all of the appliance manuals, all of the manuals for his tools, my stuff, everything in a milk crate that I was keeping out in the shop. And he thought it was all trash and threw it out. And we didn't realize it until too late. It's probably my fault that I didn't make sure he knew that's where everything was.
Not all the manuals, but
a lot of them. And
I think that was a lot of older appliances.
A lot of it was older, but there was still stuff in there that we still needed the manuals for. And went to find them like, oh no, that whole thing's gone. Well, what we did was for the stuff that we needed, you may be surprised to find out that you can go online, and I do it now while you're able to, and find manuals to any of your important equipment. If you've misplaced your manual, or if, like he was talking about, was Wood Miser and some of his other bigger tools, they may not come with, or especially if you bought it used, and you might not have all that stuff. You could go online and for free, a lot of times, be able to just download the manuals for various things. We did that with a lawnmower that we'd bought secondhand. We found the manual for it, so he was able to do some repair work using that manual. Or even the manuals that don't typically come with them, like a lot of times you won't get the repair manual. You have to pay high dollar for it, but you might be surprised at what you can find online, either for free or really inexpensively. eBay is a good place to find some of those, like usually on a disc.
Yeah, that carpenter book, a lot of educational type books. You go to buy them new and they're like hundreds of dollars. Matter of fact, I think one of the newer carpentry books there, they were like $130 or something. But carpentry really hasn't changed that much over the years. Some of the building materials, they change, and they can get a lot easier to use and stuff like that. But as far as the concepts and everything, not a whole lot's changed with carpentry. And so you can go on and get some older carpentry books. And like I said, that one, I mean, for $6, I can't see how they can ship it for that kind of money. So
maybe they're actually charging you shipping, and that's probably what it costs to ship it. I could see that costing, medium mail, maybe $6.
Right. The other thing I wanted to talk about, as far as getting some tangible hands-on materials, is I bought a little South Bend wood lathe, South Bend 9 wood lathe, and I got on, and about the first thing I tried to do, I got for like $300 at an estate sale. It had a bunch of tooling and stuff that went with it, so I thought that was pretty cool. But I got in there and bought a little renovation book, places where you can purchase different like rebuild kits and stuff for them, the wearable parts and whatnot. So I had one of the gears in there had a broken tooth. So I went on eBay and actually found one of those gears, and I haven't put it on it because I haven't really needed it. It's not like something I needed to do, but it was something like, I have another one of these gears break off, then maybe I'll want to have another gear so I can replace that one. But that's a good resource, how to run a wood lathe or how to run a metal lathe. Got on there and got that. And I got 2 books. So in the event that I ever need to, I'm in the process of building a water wheel right now. Don't know when I'll get that done. It all depends on time and everything, but I'm working on a water wheel right now to generate power on our off-grid piece of property. And so I may have to resource this at some time to fabricate a special part for that. I can get on there and buy bushings for like $9-10 a piece right now. It's much more cost effective for me to purchase those rather than to try to fabricate them, because if it wasn't doing anything else, yeah, I could get on that metal lathe and build one. But
And you have before.
I need 4. Yeah, I've built several little things on that little lathe. But
sorry.
anyway, and the last thing that I wanted to mention that folks might not be thinking about is detailed area maps of where you live. So in the event that you kind of needed to get out of Dodge, get some good topo maps. I got one here from the U.S. Forest Service, and I think I got another one from the DNR. This one from the DNR was free of our area. And so what you do is you get on there and you kind of look at the topography and different things, where water sources are and whatnot. I think that's also another good idea. And the last thing I wanted to say is talked about I think you might have mentioned that is get yourself some older books that talk about home remedies and what was the other thing I was thinking about? Firefox books. I don't know if you guys know about Firefox.
Is it
Foxfire. Yeah,
Foxfire.
Foxfire books.
Yeah, I've talked about those before. I've done a couple of videos where I show
old books like that talk about the old ways of doing things.
Right.
You know,
those were the Foxfire it's a compilation of different people that contributed to these books from the Ozarks area, right?
back east.
And all the different things. I have a whole set. I bought a brand new set with all of the books in there. And I did do a video on those. Either, I don't know if I did it by themselves or if it was one that I did it in it with some other books I recommend for homesteading related stuff. Those are excellent books. I finally found some, the whole entire, Appalachia area. In fact, his dad knew some of the people that had contributed to that because his dad's from North Carolina.
Yeah, he's from Franklin, North Carolina, and he actually knew 1 or 2 of the people.
Right.
Actually, that were
a few of them. Sorry.
Worked out. Actually were key in putting that together. And I don't remember who those people are, but that's the way he was raised back there. Barefoot and dirt floors and raising your own food. So,
yep. I was just talking on a video recently. They recently published where they were using they used a spring house to keep the food cold through the year. So, because they have electricity.
And they also use a spring house to dry out wood. Believe it or not. Yeah. That just the flow of water going through those actually somehow draws the moisture out of it.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
But I don't exactly know how that works, but
yeah,
they started out with a dirt floor. They didn't, I think they built something later.
When we got those books and we were on the phone with your dad and we were reading off some of the names of the contributors, like, oh yeah, I remember him. I remember them.
Right.
Yeah, it was kind of neat.
Pretty crazy.
So, yeah. We're going to have company coming in about 25 minutes. So I'm just letting you know.
Oh.
So, excuse me, we got to be done by then, which we should be anyway. I try to be done before 1:30. Usually, hours, we've already been on here I've already been on here for what, an hour and a half?
It's not the police, is it?
I don't know why I keep looking at that clock. I've got a clock right there. Well, that one's easier to see with my poor eyes. But
so it's not the police, is it?
No.
Okay, good.
No. So is there something else that, let me look. I thought I saw something on here that I might have forgotten. If there was any other questions. Live on animal skins or live on them? I'm not sure what that question is.
What's that?
Right there. I don't know what that means. Live on animal skins? Or I'm not sure what that's referring to. Pastor, my goal was to be done before my congregation was. Sorry, I'm reading this stuff and then half the time I don't even know what I'm scrolling up
Yeah, Tyler, just to comment on that. But yeah, my dad even mentioned is that she said it was hard times, but it was good times. Everybody had, everybody was the same. There was a guy that had a flatbed truck. I mean, it's just like you would see in some of these older movies. They wanted to go somewhere, they just went to the end of the road and the
And he
old
was talking
truck
about going to church, and they'd all go down there and pile in the back of the truck.
pile in the back of
and
a
go to
truck and
church.
off to church they went, and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it was a hard life, but it was a good life. It's not like what we kind of get ourselves inundated with stuff and time and what everybody's doing and what everybody's saying. And back then it's
Yeah.
just you had to work together. I mean, not like you didn't have enemies, but the people just got along, got it done. They worked together, and you just don't see that as much anymore. But yeah, good point, Tyler.
Okay, we'll probably, they're going to be here in about 10 minutes.
Anyway, see what else we got going on here.
Sorry, people.
Multitasking.
I like to keep my phone in here in case family members, and I'm glad I did because otherwise I wouldn't have known those people are going to be stopping by.
No, Rusty, I just try to avoid them. No, I didn't do anything wrong. Just playing. But
Oh, we all are doing something wrong, don't you? Don't you know?
Oh,
with
man,
all the
with
laws,
all the
everybody's
yeah, there's
breaking something.
millions and
Everybody's
trillions
doing
of
something.
laws out there. I'm sure we're saying or doing something here on YouTube that's probably going to get us flagged or something.
Yeah, I'd say, gosh, you never know. You just never know, and the rules are always changing.
Yeah, the police could come before our company.
Who knows? So I just feel like there's something else that I was going to bring up, but I didn't have in my notes. Or maybe it had to do with you talking about books. But
Books, manuals, and maps. How-to stuff.
I do have different videos about books. I might do another one, and I'll probably be doing a lot of repeat, but there's some things that have changed. There's some books I probably wouldn't recommend anymore that I used to, and books that I would be more apt to recommend, like especially when it comes to herbs and stuff. There's I do think, as I say quite often, when it comes to learning more about herbs, is about learning about those that grow in your area, things that you can forage, and not just herbs, but obviously food. You may be surprised to find out what kind of food grows in your area that just always gets overlooked. Like around here, blackberries are considered a noxious weed, but we love blackberries. And there's so many apple trees out here that people constantly have apples just falling off their trees into the ground and nobody does anything with them. I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of times people aren't doing anything with their apples. And it's like, it's food, and we kind of overlook stuff that's just, it's just kind of, we just don't think about it. And so, excuse me, that tends to happen when I've been talking for too long. But yeah,
plenty kind of breeds complacency.
Right. That's kind of what I was getting at. It's like we can run down to the store and get apples. We don't have to go pick them. It's too much work. Or go ask the neighbor if we can pick some of their apples or gather them. There's, or going out and picking blackberries, especially when you're talking the Himalayas, the ones that taste the best out here are the ones with the biggest thorns, and they have the most spiders amongst them. But let me tell you, it is worth it to me because they're good blackberries, and I like to have a lot of them put up because they make the best pies and jams and so on.
Well, you take things for granted too.
Take things for granted.
It's like when you go past the stuff every day. It's like when somebody shows up here, it's like, oh, we want to go to the rainforest or something like that. And it's like, oh, we haven't been there for 20 years,
I haven't been there
just things time. Like that. I mean, and we, I think it's important that we just step back every now and then and just thank God for what we have available to us here and work with what you have. I mean, we got rain, we got slugs, we got mud. Work with that.
But we have a lot of green. There's a lot of green out here. I came from Wenatchee, middle of Washington, where it's hot and dry in the summer. And, the rare times we've been back that way, I'm like, where's all the trees? I'm so used to seeing everything green all year round that it's weird when you go over there and there's just a lot of dirt. And I don't remember it being like that. As a kid, I thought we had lots of greenery around there, but not compared to here. And because of all the rain, there are a lot of things that grow like crazy, like the blackberries and so much more. And so it's learning about your area. So what I was saying is I think one of the most important books to get is going to be something that is more to your part of your own country, like just the ones for like United States alone, because there's so many parts of the United States that are very, very different. They can be completely opposite in climate, even just in my own state, two sides of our state, total opposite climates. So the things that are going to grow on this side of the mountains are going to be different than what grows on the other side of the mountain. So finding something that's more tailored to your area so you can figure out what things grow naturally around there, what you can start looking for. And, something's got a lot of pictures too, so you can familiarize yourself with that. And yeah, I mean, books are important. And I do think, especially with the way things are going, that I probably should put out a new book related video, even if I'm just repeating some of the same old stuff, but I know there's more I can add to that. But I do have one, I think one of the best ones I have out right now, where I cover books on herbs, books on a few other topics, is called Building Your Preparedness Library. I don't think I mentioned the Foxfire books in there because I didn't have them yet, but at least if you want to go look that up. And then the other thing is looking at vintage books, just like some of the ones that Patrick has. I have some great vintage books. When it comes to cookbooks and more, I prefer the vintage books because they were actually making stuff from scratch, not like, oh, take a can of this soup from the store, Campbell's soup, this and this Jiffy cornbread. And
you got two ingredients.
You actually make stuff from scratch. And those are the kind of cookbooks you need to look for, and any of that kind of stuff. So vintage and antique books, I think are just, for a lot of things, or kids books. Somebody mentioned earlier about a bunch of books getting dumped off somewhere. Well, like the schools are constantly getting rid of older books and bringing in the junk, right? So several years ago, my sister-in-law brought up a whole bunch of vintage books, and some of them were near antique that the school had in that area they just got rid of them. They're great kids books, great readers and more. And I took a bunch of them. I'm like, these are great.
Right.
And even though by that point, my kids were kind of outgrown some of them, I knew that one day I'd have grandbabies. And now we have number 4 on the way. So having these books has been great. And we have been reading them to our kids. We're still buying some new. Like I just recently bought the basic 5 Dr. Seuss books that we all grew up with and love, like Fox and Socks, Cat in a Hat, and Hop on Pop. And those are 5 of them in there. Redfish,
Green Eggs and Ham.
Redfish, Bluefish, Green Eggs and Ham. Those 5. And we read all of them to the kids in one day. And so, so don't forget the kids when you're talking about, even if your kids are grown, don't forget someday you may have grandkids or other kids that you're looking after. Get some good kids books.
And get some good entertainment books too. I mean, that's, after a while, you probably go stir crazy if you don't have any other ways of communication or
board
entertainment.
Games.
Get board games and get books that are just entertaining as well.
Yeah, right.
Like I focus too much. I'm too practical. I focus too much on technical books.
Yeah. I mean, I do have some books that are just for pleasure reading kind of books, but I don't have time for that. I had time for that in a long time.
Right.
But anyway, so we should probably get off here. It has actually been plenty long. And I do appreciate Patrick coming in and joining us and sharing his books. And especially for those people that were asking some of those questions last week. And so I don't know what next week's topic's going to be about, but I have a couple ideas brewing in the back of my head. So thanks to my moderators for being here and watching out for us and you know, hammering people with a wrench if they needed it, though I don't think anyone in my chat ever has so far. But at least you're there and you're ready. I appreciate it. And for everyone that came in and saying hi and all your likes and your comments and all the other things and just supporting us and just being there. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a great community, and I'm very, very thankful to all of you and to our Heavenly Father for being able to have this outreach going both ways, because
Right.
you guys are a blessing to us too.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
anyway, thanks for being here, everyone. Take care
And
and
God
God
bless.
bless.